Welcome, everybody, to All-Star Insights, all things youth baseball. I'm your co-host, Chris McKnight, and usually we have Coach Rock with us today, but he is unavailable, and we have our special guest today, former Benedictine head coach, Mr. Sean Ryan. Hey, Sean, how you doing?
Doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you on, and got a lot of stuff to cover today, so we're going to just jump right in and get going. So we always like to start off, ask our guests how they gotten started in baseball in your youth. What, where you started, what league, and the city that you began.
Yeah, it all started at Murphy Candler Little League outside of Atlanta, which actually was not too far from where I went to high school, Marist in Atlanta. And I grew up at the ballpark. My brothers both played baseball, and my sisters played softball. And their family stories about me spending many hours sitting in dirt piles and eating dirt and allegedly watching baseball, but I was probably getting more dirty in the dirt piles than they were on the field. But yeah, it started back at Murphy Candler Little League, and have very fond memories of playing there. And every time I drive back to Atlanta and go see family or go see friends, I always drive by the Little League to see what it looks like these days. And it still looks great. It's a great place to play and a great place to grow up and learn baseball.
Cool. Very cool. So after Little League into high school, you went to high school in the suburb of Atlanta?
Yeah, just north side of Atlanta at a school called Marist. And my brothers and sisters all went to a school called Peachtree High School. Unbeknownst to my family, when I was growing up and finishing elementary school, that my parents really wanted to send me to Marist, and the school Peachtree ultimately merged with its big rival Dunwoody. And that would have been fine. Had lots of friends of mine who went to Dunwoody, but it really worked out well for me. Marist was a great opportunity. It had a really tremendous baseball program, and all the athletics have been really strong over the years. And I went there not knowing really what to expect, except for I was a little guy who loved to play baseball. And actually, the first year, one of my good friends of mine and I both got cut from the team, and the coaches had said, "Come see us. We'll tell you what you need to improve upon." And as eighth graders trying out for the ninth grade team, being undersized and a little bit small, the coach said, "You guys are great players. You just got to grow." So that was not the best thing I'd ever heard, as far as we couldn't really control our size at the time. But outside of that one little hiccup of not making the team as an eighth grader on the ninth grade team, it was such a fantastic experience and really prepared me for life, as well as the opportunity to play baseball a few years down the road.
Yeah. So during high school, just tell us a little bit about what, your dream of playing college baseball. When did you think that you had an opportunity? What year, and what made you feel that you had the skill level to make that jump to college?
Maybe we can come back to the second part of the answer. I mean, in a couple of seconds, I'll tell you how I got to college, but it was, I always knew I was a good ball player, but like I mentioned a second ago, I was pretty small. I entered high school about 5'2", 125 pounds, 130 pounds. I wasn't a very big kid. That was in eighth grade when I entered high school. And, I played. It was kind of funny. On my first team that I made, the ninth grade team, they moved me over to third base. They had a legendary coach named Jerry Queen, who was coaching varsity. And he and others, I think, decided that pretty early on that there were a couple good ball players. Matt Chipman played short, Andrew Johnson played second, and they kind of put me over at third base. And right there, I was next to a guy named Brian Harpring, who, if you know any of the Harpring family, Matt Harpring was a great basketball player who played at Georgia Tech and went on to the pros. And Brian played at Northwestern. And so here's this big hulking guy, and then there's this little tiny guy, and we were really good friends at the time. And I could start to understand then, like I was a pretty good defensive player. So in ninth grade, I kind of knew I was pretty good, and it was really just a matter of could I get big enough? Could I ever grow? And my brothers and sisters, I don't believe any of them are above like 5'3" or 5'4". So I don't come from a very big family. I actually did grew to about 5'9" in high school. And as I got further along, I felt like I was a pretty good ball player. But as you know, Chris, it was different back then. I mean, how do you get recruited? It was a lot more difficult as I was finishing high school in 1991. I know that coaches had seen me play, but I never really knew which coaches had seen me play. And we were very fortunate that the program was really, really good. And we won a state championship in 1990. I think we went 29-5. And we had a bunch of kids on that team who ended up playing Division I baseball. And I think that helped maybe solidify for me when I was just a role player on that team. I played defense when certain guys pitched. I think I had 9 at bats. I was 4 for 9 on the year. I got to pitch. I think I had 3 wins as a pitcher, as just kind of a mop up guy. But I think at that point I recognized I was pretty good, but I didn't know I was that good with the guys who were going off to college to play.
And so, University of Richmond, tell us how that transpired and what got you up to Richmond.
Yeah. And that's what I was hoping you'd ask or we could talk about because I ended up going to the University of South Carolina for my first year. And Georgia Tech, I had an opportunity to go into school, and I say go into school because I don't know if I really had an opportunity to play baseball there. The coach knew who I was. Jim Morris was the coach at that point, but my grades were good, but I wasn't great in math and science, and so they said you can start school a couple weeks after high school graduation. And I was like, not really ready for college yet. So I chose to go to the University of South Carolina thinking, well, maybe I can just try out and walk on here. And after they had said that the tryouts would be several weeks of tryouts. You get an opportunity to show what you can do against our guys and be a really full tryout. The first day came and uh, for most everybody, I think, except for one person, it was a 2-hour tryout. And we were all told, we don't have any room. So that was a tough pill. Not that I had huge expectations, but I had huge hopes that I could do that. So I think that if I had gone to Georgia or Georgia Tech, I think probably something similar would have happened. So fast forward to the spring, I'm kind of missing it. I'm working for the newspaper, the student newspaper, and was the assistant sports editor as a freshman. And I was missing baseball. I really wanted to play. And I was talking to a few of my friends, one of them, Andrew Johnson, who I mentioned, he was playing baseball at Wake Forest. Another one was Jason Manton, who was playing baseball at Vanderbilt. I was trying to stay in touch with them, and Vanderbilt wasn't the program it was, but these guys were they were resources for me, and they said, yeah, you can play at this level. And so I ended up, the story is the University of South Carolina had the sports room, and you had media guides in there. So we had the baseball media guide. And so I pulled out the South Carolina media guide, and it had all their opponents in the back and had mailing addresses because that's how you got in touch with coaches back then. And so I ended up sending a letter to 30 or so schools that they played that year. And I attached a letter from a summer league coach I had named Duke Hott, and I played for his team for several years in the summer. And he had done some scouting, I believe, with the Astros. And he wrote this very great story that just said that I wasn't flashy. I wasn't, that strong of, huge of a player or anything. But what I did every day in and day out, that's why I could play college baseball. I was very steady and did everything right, very fundamental, which I always cherished that letter that he wrote on my behalf. And so I sent to 30 schools, and 2 responded. One was Georgia State, which was just starting its baseball program up again, Division I baseball program up again. And they were based in Atlanta. And I thought, okay, that might be an opportunity. And the other one was University of Richmond. And I had a call from my dad, and he left me a message on my voicemail at 520 Laborde at the University of South Carolina. And he said, hey, we just got a call from a guy named Ron Atkins from the University of Richmond. You should expect a call. And I mean, my heart was racing. I was like, oh my God, like this is exciting. And sure enough, Coach Atkins called, and we talked for a few minutes. He said, if you're interested, come on up in the summer. And I did. And when we took a quick tour, I still to this day, he said he was going to send somebody to watch me play in the summer. I still to this day don't know if he ever sent anybody out to watch me play. The Saturday we played a doubleheader. He was supposed to send somebody. I think I was like 4 for 6 with, a couple home runs on a small field, a couple doubles, played great. So I don't know if he had anybody there or not, but he ended up offering me an opportunity to walk on at Richmond. And I made one thing, Chris. I said, I've already been cut after 2 hours. I said, the only thing I'd ask is like, can I have a year to prove myself? And Coach Atkins said, sure, we'll give you that opportunity, and gave me a year to prove myself. So I went ahead and jumped at that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a cool story. I mean, how different recruiting is nowadays from sitting down and writing 30 letters and hoping to get, a response and not even know if guys are coming out to see you play, where nowadays the showcase circuit and the college camps and just the overall recruiting process has done a 180 from, back then. And again, it really wasn't that long ago. I know we like to say it was, but you look,
It feels a while ago.
yeah, well, but do you look at the recruiting the way it's totally changed, even within the last 5 years. That's really the way that I think a lot of guys probably got their first taste of introductions to coaches, just writing letters and hoping people that would respond.
Writing letters, and I think back then the camps were crucial. I think even, I mean, I think they're important today, and I always recommend players consider going to camps or going to workout outs. Go to short hitting camp someplace because I think you get familiar with the coaches. But my buddy AJ, who had played at Wake Forest, he was seen at a camp. He went to a camp, and I don't know if it was at Wake Forest or not, but that's where he was seen. I was like, all of us were like, how did that happen? What happened? I don't know what happened with Jason, who went to Vanderbilt. The guys who went before, there's a guy named Darren Dowhauer who played at University of Virginia. The guys that I got to play third base when they pitched, a guy named Scott Benson and a guy named Robbie Thomas, they both went to college at Charleston, which was just starting its Division I program at that time. So I don't really know how all of it happened for them. I think the coaches at that point, I think they could help you a little bit, but I think they were even trying to figure out, how do you get those guys in front of people?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a whole new world with the recruiting process. So you graduate University of Richmond. Next step into baseball, you're going to start your coaching career. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I had a wonderful time at Richmond and played on some really special teams. And when I finished, Chris, I went to one workout or one tryout with the Cincinnati Reds. Just figured maybe I could try out and see if something would happen. And I didn't really have huge expectations there. But the scout who led it was a guy named Bo Trumbo, and he had told a bunch of us. He pulled us aside and said, "You guys are all good ball players," and he'd seen us play a lot. And a couple of us ended up from that tryout. They did want to do some independent ball, but he kind of said that if you want to get in, you need to go independent. We'll keep watching you and we'll check you out. So I wasn't really interested in doing that. I had taken a job at the Richmond Times-Dispatch as a part-time copy editor on the sports desk, so I could hopefully start my sports writing career. And I really, to be honest, I was done with baseball after that tryout. I wanted to go watch it, but I didn't want to play it anymore. I didn't want to do adult leagues. I didn't even start playing softball. So coaching at that point really wasn't an option. So I finished up in 1996. And about 5 years later, I got into coaching because, again, Coach Atkins, who really has done so much for me in my entire life. Coach Atkins had lunch with a gentleman named Dickie Douglas, and he was looking for a coach to take over the team that he had coached, the Richmond Red Wings, a travel team, because the kids now were 15 years old and they were starting to not want to be coached by dads anymore. They needed somebody else to come in. And Coach Atkins apparently over lunch had said, "Well, I have a former player named Sean Ryan who's working couple different jobs, and I think he might be someone you want to talk to." And sure enough, I did, and that's what got me into coaching, and that would have been in 2001, I believe. And that's how it all got started. I coached a travel team. I had a blast with them, and I thought that it was just such a great opportunity, and so that's what got me into it. And a couple years later, I guess it was my second year, I coached at Maggie Walker. I got the job at Maggie Walker when it was starting its baseball program. They had gone out of Thomas Jefferson High School. The school was housed inside Thomas Jefferson, and when they decided to separate and start at school again and put the new school on Lombardy Street, they were looking for a baseball coach. And through a couple different connections there, I was able to interview and get that job. And that was in 2002. So 2 years at Maggie Walker, 2002 and three, and then took the job at Benedictine in the fall of 2003. So my first year was 2004 at Benedictine.
Nice. And you had success at, Maggie starting a program there, and then going into Benedictine. What was your, the culture that you tried to create, your first year at Benedictine?
Yeah. Maggie Walker was a tremendous experience, and I was hired by Jim Holdren, the legendary track coach, and Paige Hawkins, who has done just a tremendous job with field hockey and other sports. And I'd say the success we had there, Chris, was the first year. I mean, we were playing mostly, we played a lot of 7-inning games, where at that time, Maggie Walker TJ hadn't been doing that. And I had a really good group of seniors. And so I was learning on the fly, but thankfully I had a really, really strong group of seniors who could at least play pretty good defense, had a couple good arms. As you know, pitching and defense, if you do that well, you can stick around some games. We didn't pull off any huge upsets, but we we were staying in games a lot better and competing a lot better. And the second year wasn't quite as successful. When the job opened up at Benedictine, I mean, I'll be honest, I was confident in my abilities, but I was also still new at this. I'd have 2 years of experience under my belt. And when I got there, I just, I think you start things and then you have to adapt. So I think what I wanted to prove early on was that I knew baseball. I wanted to prove to them I knew how to do things. I could, at that age, I could still go out there and field grounders with them.
Yeah.
I could throw from the mound. I threw from the mound until I was about 40. So I'd throw from the mound, even if I couldn't throw at 76 miles an hour, I could still adjust and make that. So early on, I wanted to prove to them that I knew the game. I was young enough to be able to relate with them. And I wanted to carry out what the school had done, which is a lot of structure. I wanted to run practices with a lot of structure. And that's one of those things that I had to change over the years is that, one thing I learned after a couple of years is that the students, if they're having rough days with the military inside, that the last thing they want is to come out to the baseball practice and feel like, all right, it's the military all over again, or it's, damn, Coach Ryan's just, he's even tougher than what they're doing inside the school. So not that I don't think I was ever really too tough, but I think those were the things I started. I really wanted to start off was the knowledge, compassion for the players. I wanted to see the best out of them. And I think the first year, there weren't huge expectations for my first team at Benedictine that we'd lost a lot of guys. A lot of guys who are now going to be in the lineup didn't have a ton of experience. And I don't know that the expectations were for us to pull off some of the wins that we did. And we ended up making the playoffs in the first year. And I went toe to toe with a guy named Michael Schwimmer, who was ultimately a major league pitcher for the Phillies. And we had a lead and couldn't upset the number 3 seed and a future major leaguer. But it was a very fun experience, and just got me ready to coach. From that point on, I was like, this school is going to be great, and I'm going to coach here as long as I can.
Yeah, no, and you've had a Hall of Fame career at Benedictine, and again, of course, everybody in baseball looks at the wins and losses, and that's a lot of people they look at. That's how a coach is measured. But just like you said before, it's not all about the wins and losses too. It's about creating a culture, helping those young men grow as ninth graders up until when they graduate. So just tell us a little bit about, so some of the big wins and losses, but also the wins off the field as well.
Yeah, I'll start with that last part, Chris. Is that one of the reasons I really wanted to do it was get into coaching was because it was challenging as I was going through the recruiting process, and I thought I could be a resource for players to either play baseball or be involved with baseball at the next level. Around 2002 is when Phil Stanton and I started a website, College Baseball Insider. We were received very, very warmly by the coaching community. Got to the point where, after a few years, I had so many coaches' numbers in my phone that I could text and say, hey, could we do a quick interview? That what I quickly realized is I could do the same thing for players in our area, not only at Benedictine, but that was really why I wanted to do it. So I'm probably as proud of the fact that close to 100 players, still counting because a couple of my guys still playing might still commit in the next couple of years. So I've got a couple more years where that number might go up and creep closer to 100, but close to 100 players over my 24 years ended up playing some level of college baseball, or at least being on a roster. That's how I kind of grade it, that they committed, if they committed for something. So that was really rewarding. The games, a lot of them over 24 years, they now blend together. It's tough to remember them all, but lots of big moments and big wins. Sometimes some games that you just remember that even if you didn't win, you just enjoyed the experience of being out there. So, since I've retired, one of the things I do miss a lot, not only the players, but also the coaches who I've got really strong relationships with, being on the field with them, coaching, catching up, and going through that. But if you had to, I think we won 5 state championships, but I think sometimes it's the stuff that helps you get to a state championship that you might remember a little bit more, because none of the 5 that we had came easy. And I've always said that in our tournament, 3 wins in 5 days is a really hard tournament to win. You start on a Tuesday. If you win that, you play on a Friday. If you win that, you play on a Saturday. And that's not comparing public or private. I'm just saying in the private schools, it's really hard. It's a hard tournament to win, and you can have the best team and you get upset, or, it's just a grind to get through. So to single out like one state championship In 2019, our team 28-2, and we finished up being nationally ranked by USA Today in the top 10. And the first game, we're playing the 8 seed, which they had to go in and play. Actually, they might have been the 9 seed. Because of a rainout, Norfolk Christian and Paul VI had to come to Benedictine to play right before our game. So they were playing the 8-9 game for the right to play the number 1 seed, which was us. And because they were rained out on Monday, we had to get the field ready for them. I'm out there at 7 in the morning, like working away on the field so they could start at like 12, I think. Maybe, I don't remember the exact time. So Norfolk Christian ends up winning. So they've already played a 7-inning game against Paul VI. Then they have to turn around and play us. And we're the favorite. We're the best team in the state that year. And lo and behold, we blow a lead. And we played 10 innings that day, and darkness hits. 10 innings. And I mean, this team's played 17 innings. Norfolk Christian's played 17 innings. And they have to go home, drive back to Norfolk, and we come back the next day to pick up and resume the game. And they scored, we scored. Then I think an inning went by where neither team scored. Then we get to the, I guess that'd be the 13th. They scored, and our star player, Jamari Baylor, we're down to our last out, down to our last strike, and he hits a 2-out home run to tie it again. And then all of a sudden we come up in the next inning, a guy named Bennett Lloyd hits a walk-off home run in the 14th inning. So 14 innings. I mean, it was exhausting. It's probably the worst night of sleep I've ever had. My stomach was churning. How did we blow this lead? How did we not close this out? Like we might lose, and all of a sudden, this miracle season is going to be lost in the first round. We ended up winning. Second game we won. I think we beat Cape Henry. Then third time we beat. Third game was against St. Christopher's, and we won that. So it was a little bit easier the rest of the way, but still very challenging just to get through those 3 games in 5 days.
Yeah, no, that's definitely, and anytime you get into the playoffs, everybody always says it's a new season, and it really is, because the underdogs that have nothing to lose, you guys have a target on your back going in, so it's really a free for all when you get to that playoff situation.
It is, and the depth of the state. I mean, as you can imagine. I mean, there's good years and bad years when teams where the depth's really good. 19. Paul VI and Norfolk Christian were both really good. They were both really good teams. And then I think from a period of there, except for the COVID year, 21 through 25, when I finished, it was a pretty deep state. We were the 8 seed last year. St. Anne's Belfield was the 9 seed. And both of us have really good arms that can go out there and beat anybody in the state. So I think that's what's changed maybe from when I started. I mean, that first year, yeah, we were pretty good and we were facing a major league arm, but the depth of the state has been really, really good over the years. And 2024, when we won the state championship, we opened up and another tough game to start. And then you get to Paul VI and we go 2-1, I think, in the state semifinal. And then you go into the state championship and we're being no hit against Case and Wagner and Miller through 5 innings. And you're just kind of like, I don't know if anybody's going to score. They hadn't scored. We hadn't scored. Jake Wise has thrown a gem for us. Case and Wagner's thrown a gem for them. And it's just, it's a hard tournament to win, especially in the last 5 or 6 years when everybody has 1 or 2 Division I arms. And the guys who come in are all D3 caliber or D2 or JC. I mean, they're college level arms. And that's been a real challenge to figure out how to score runs.
Yeah. So let's take a little detour and talk about big changes that you've seen in the development of players when you first started coaching until now. What were the biggest things that you've seen players get better at, and also things that you think players really need to focus on to get to the next level?
Yeah, I would say getting better at. So pitchers, let's start there. I mean, because they're working out all year long, they're going to different trainers, they're working with different coaches. I think one big thing that it won't come as a shock to anyone is the velocities have increased over the years. And again, there's just more pitchers who are throwing, let's say, 84 and above. I still think at this level, 84, 85, if you're locating, you can get a lot of outs and you can still sneak it past certain hitters, but the hitters are getting more and more acclimated. 85 doesn't scare them anymore, where it may have 10 or 15 years ago. So I think that's one thing. From a hitting perspective, I give a lot of credit to all the other coaches around our area who work with hitters. I mean, I think generally the fundamentals are are pretty darn good. And I think that hitters today, because people have decided to specialize, they're just hitting more. I mean, I think there's a lot of benefits to having a bat in your hand a lot more often than maybe when we were growing up, when you really put the bat down at the end of the summer and you did whatever you were going to do. There's also some drawbacks to that. I think getting away and playing some different sports is good, especially from the arm fatigue factor and not throwing all year round and doing some different stuff with that. So I think those are some places where players have advanced. I think certain fundamentals are another. I think in a lot of cases, I'm getting infielders. At Benedictine, I coach the infielders, and sometimes the last few years I'd be coaching the pitchers too. So I think infielders, I'm seeing something. Some. I think they come in a little bit more advanced than maybe when I first started. I'll tell you, Chris, one thing that bothers me still is I think that even to this day, we'll get some players, would come in from a throwing perspective and their mechanics are a little bit off. And you're kind of figuring out, I wish that we were getting kids in ninth grade whose throwing mechanics were more sound. Even some of your better players, and you're kind of watching, thinking that's going to be one of the things that we're going to have to work on. And then I think this also comes. A lot of folks say this. I think the overall awareness and attention to detail in the game, I do think that's dropped off a little bit. And by that, I just mean that base running. I think that's probably the best place. I think base running is something that it's important for every program to work on it, but we started trying to do more and more and more, partly because we needed to work on it. But secondly, our guys really needed the awareness. They weren't as good as maybe we were 10 years ago, just naturally coming in. So I think that there's been a little bit of a lack of attention to things like that. And I don't necessarily blame anyone in particular, any group, it's not travel baseball. It's not Little League. It's just one of those things that I do believe our kids today don't watch the game like we used to. I think baseball for a lot of them still is, even though they've made it in Major League Baseball a lot shorter, I think that there are a lot of kids who won't invest the time that we used to and get out to the ballpark. And I think some of that learning just by watching has decreased over the years.
Yeah, without a doubt. And I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of kids just don't watch games anymore. They go to MLB Tonight, they'll watch the highlights and they'll watch the clips, but actually getting and sitting down or going to the park or watching a game on TV, you can learn so much, from that. I just used to remember watching the Mets and the Yankees, and I still remember WWOR and WPIX for the Yankees and, listening to Ralph Kiner and Bob Murphy and Phil Rizzuto and Bill White and just listening to those guys explain the plays, what they thought was going to happen and how things transpired. You learn so much from those guys. And then if you wanted to watch, there wasn't ESPN back when I was growing up, but they had This Week in Baseball, and they'd recap, the previous week, and they'd give you little tips. And I think that's probably a big piece that's missing in the learning aspect of the game.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you and I are similar ages, and I used to watch the Cubs on WGN, and I used to watch the Mets on WWR. I used to watch the Braves on the Superstation TBS. I mean, I was down at the ballpark all the time as a kid. And I want to make a distinction. I don't think that it means that we don't still have baseball junkies. I think there are baseball junkies, and just like everything, things change. I always encourage my players. I said, look, if you think you can play at Randolph-Macon, or you think you can play at Hamden-Sydney, or you think you can play at Richmond or VCU, you know what you need to do is you need to go out there and physically watch them and look at the second baseman, look at the shortstop, look at the pitchers, look at their size, look at, and really compare what they do. And part of that was, I think we had a lot of kids who really just assumed, okay, well, I could play at that level. And in some cases they could, in other cases they probably weren't quite at that level. But the second part of it was because I wanted to see the speed of the game and see what they were looking for, and also hope we pick up a few things. So I think better in my career, I mean, we always did live action stuff, and we always tried to play, practice as fast as we could. There's only so many ways you can teach bunt coverages and make it fast. I mean, but we tried to make it, and that's something I learned over the years, is that I got better and better. And the last 10 years would look different from the previous 10 years as far as structuring practice. Some of that with help from my assistant coaches who are bringing their ideas to the table. Other times it's just like, what do we need to do to play as fast as possible? I had the fortune because I was running this college baseball website. I've gone to Omaha 7 or 8 times, and I could see what an Omaha baseball team would look like. I'd go to regionals at Virginia. I'd go to super regionals in different places, and watching high level college baseball, I try to bring that back to our practices. And one thing I took away when UCLA won its national championship, I don't recall the year off the top of my head, but UCLA won, and they basically said that we practice like game speed all the time. Everything is game speed. And I think that's hard. It's easier to do in college than it is in high school. I mean, you can't always do everything, but hearing that, I tried to bring that back and try to replicate as much of that as possible. And in no way am I saying I helped run perfect practices. That's really hard to do, but that was one of the things that I tried to do. And through doing that, we're hopefully catching up some of the players who maybe didn't have the wherewithal or the awareness of what they should be doing on the bases or where they needed to be on this and that. And, it's one thing to kind of walk them through things, and kind of sometimes you have to do that. You have to teach them the fundamentals. And I've always been big on, let's focus on fundamentals. Let's do our fundamentals first, and then we can grow from there, whether it's somebody who's a great hitter or someone who's a great pitcher, or the kid who really needs to start on just learning how to throw the baseball correctly. But we try to push them into game speed as much as possible to help them catch up in some places where they might have needed some help.
Yeah. And I think one of the big things too is just like you had mentioned, as a coach, you transition to a a better practice plan, lack of a better word, over the years because you were exposed to different things and you took those ideas, brought them back to your program, and then used them in your program. And I think that's what a lot of younger coaches just have to keep in the back of their mind that you're not going to have the perfect practice plan your first or second year coaching. If I look back when I first started coaching, I thought I knew how to do things, and I look back now and said, how did I even get through a year doing
Yeah.
what I did and then going to clinics and learning and listening? I think that's a big piece of what the younger coaches, and not even younger coaches, all coaches really need to keep. I used to go, one of my old coaches used to say every year, try to throw out 10% of what and add something new, 10% new into your practice every year to keep it fresh and to stay current. And I think that's really important for coaches, to whatever level you're coaching at, to realize you have to, number one, you have to stay current, but number two, you have to play to your roster, especially in high school where you can't really recruit. You get what you get. So you have to adapt and play to your roster.
Yeah, 100%. And I think all my coaches, from my first assistant, Alan Broadus, and Grant Fisher, guys who helped me early on. I mean, I said before, I wanted to kind of show I knew what I was doing. With that comes some times where I wasn't very good at delegating and letting the coaches do what they were there to do. Yes, they can go run this, go run that. I got better at that. And, when you have great coaches, Josh Owens was one of my pitching coaches for a long time. I had Cam Cassidy, who really talented coach who's now coaching again in high school. More recently, John Carpin, Brian Tolan, the current coach, Brock Carter, Chris Rorty, guys like that. I mean, they know baseball. So I think I got better at delegating, even though there was always, you're the head coach, so you're the one making the decision. So that took a lot of time for me to get more and more comfortable with. And I think all those guys I mentioned would probably say, well, so there's some certain things he still wouldn't delegate. And that's probably got some truth to it. But coaching to your team, that's a really important thing. So I'll go back to 2019. The team was loaded. I mean, the team was loaded. We stole, more than 100 bases from our first three guys. I think it was 120 guys who could steal. You guys can steal. Do you need me to put on the steal sign? So we had green light even at second base, taught him how to do it. A guy like Brett Cook had, I don't know, he stole third base probably close to 20 times, and you just kind of put it in their hands. And I told Cam Cassidy and Josh Owens at the time, I said, look, in some cases, we just got to get out of these guys' way. Yes, we can be hard on them when we need to, but they know how to play the game. And the last thing we need to be doing is overcoaching. And then you have teams, like last year, where we felt as coaches we really had to try to manipulate as much as we could because we weren't a terrific offense, but we were pretty darn good pitching, defense, and we had a smart team. So we were out there bunting a lot more. We're out there, trying to steal third and bunt the runner home from second base. We're trying to do different things because we coach to what some of our strengths were like that. In 2024, we won a state championship and went 24-4. That was the easiest year I ever had in coaching. Just the kids, the parents, everything. They were just everybody moving in the right direction all year. And, that team was a little bit of a mix. It's like so much talent, but also we had to grind to score runs. Like I said before, I think we scored 2 runs in the first round game, 2 runs in the second round, and we're scoreless, being no hit into the 6th inning of the state championship game before we scored 6 runs in the last 2 innings. So there's a lot of importance to understanding your team and what your team's strengths are and what you do well, and where as coaches you can help them find some other places they can do well.
And I want to touch on just a little bit. I know we're coming up on our time here, but I do want to touch a little bit about your role with the Virginia Baseball Coaches Association. You're the president of the VBCA, and just tell us a little bit of how that started and what your role, your part in that organization.
So Tim Mary, who you know really well, and others who are going to watch this know really well, came to me with an idea, and he said, "Why don't we have a coaches association?" And I was like, "I don't know. I think there was one at some point." And so he asked me if I would help kind of get things off the ground, and because I had a lot of connections around the state. And I said, "Tim, it's a great idea. I'll do anything I can. Keep in mind that I'm working full time in public relations and I'm coaching when I can. I travel coach with the Mid Atlantic Orioles. I've got a lot of stuff going on." So we started by reaching out to some coaches we felt would be good stewards for us to go out and say, "This is what we're starting." I remember we reached out to Brian O'Connor at UVA at the time, and he was like, "I'm in. Like, why don't we have a coaches association?" Like everybody, it was a rather easy conversation for the first group to say, "Would you be interested in this?" And now Tim still does a great job of leading us as executive director. So I'm president of the board and have been since we started. And really, it's just trying to continue to go out and grow by letting the coaches know that we're around, we're here for them, and ultimately trying to do things that will benefit them in becoming better coaches to their players. So whether it's clinics that we're hosting or our annual convention, looking to raise awareness of some of the players by doing a senior all-star game that has been really successful and a lot of fun. So it's really just trying to be an asset for coaches, a resource so that they can reach out to us, but also we can reach out to them to try to just help everyone become better coaches and better people. And we think that leads to better players.
And the VBCA is open up to all levels of coaches. And really, all they have to do is just go on the VBCA website and register. And I will tell you just the clinics that I've been to every year, you pick up something new. You think you know the game, and then you go and you listen to somebody at one of the VBCA clinics, and all of a sudden you walk out and you say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to put that into my program. I like that idea." And sometimes it's not even about practice. It's just about what we spoke about before about culture and how to relate to players. You pick up little things from other coaches, that things that have worked for them over the years. So it's not just about the X's and O's.
It is for all levels. And I think there's certain things that we do to try to cater to coaches, maybe who are coaching a certain level at the little league level or the youth level. I think even for the veteran coaches, I think you hit it on the head. I mean, I used to go to clinics and try to say, all right, is there something I could do a little bit better? In some cases, you go in and you hear things and it's like, oh, well, we're already doing that. And it kind of gives you an affirmation that, okay, maybe we're doing a few
Yeah.
things right. Hey, look at us. We've got some good ideas here. So it really, and I mentioned it before too, is that the camaraderie. I mean, now that I'm not coaching, I don't hear from all my buddies quite as often. So I'm reaching out to them occasionally saying, "Hey, how's the season going?" and that sort of thing. That's my way to kind of get my coaching fix right now, is to hear how other programs are doing. I've been to a handful of Benedictine games already. I've seen some other teams that I haven't had a opportunity. I went out on to watch some of my Orioles players the other day on the JV level. So I'm getting to do things that I haven't gotten to do in a long time. But I think the relationships is, that's why you go to conventions. You learn something, but you're also building some relationships with other coaches. You're seeing coaches that uh, you just want to be around. You want to pick their brains a little bit. You want to hear about what they're doing. You hear about their players and successes, and you hear about sometimes you're sharing your players and your successes. I think it's a way to grow within the game, even for those who really don't feel like they want to change a whole lot. Hopefully, you're just getting that interaction with people around the state. I think anyone who thinks they've figured it all out and that they're perfect and this is just the way they're going to do it. It may have worked back when Chris, you and I were playing baseball where somebody would never change and you could kind of go through 3 straight seasons and say, I know exactly what's coming. It just doesn't work that way anymore. The players are too smart and too advanced, and the parents, who probably were calling coaches back in the 90s too, they're still reaching out and sometimes calling the athletic director to say we need to do different things. So it's the players are too good now. If you're not out there trying to improve, especially with all the technology, if you're not trying to improve with some of those new aspects of the game, then it's going to make it more and more difficult.
Without a doubt. Well, Sean, I really appreciate, your time today and just the insights from somebody that has been a coach at all the levels and really, again, a Hall of Fame high school baseball career, 5 state championships. That is really, I know people look at that and they say, I don't think people really know how hard it is to win a state championship. So that and winning 5 is really outstanding. So I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you being part of the Mid-Atlantic Orioles staff. We always look forward to having you come back and work with our guys, and especially in the off season on our infield specialty groups. I look forward to that, working with you myself. So thanks for your time today. We really appreciate it. And again, everyone, All Star Insights, sponsored by Kids on First Foundation and Tuckahoe Sports. Thank you, Sean.
You bet, Chris. Thanks so much for having me. Really enjoyed the conversation.